Hi, I'm Martin Kelly of Friends Journal, and with me is Olivia Chalkley. Olivia has an article in our September issue called "Young Adults Want What Early Friends Had." So, welcome, Olivia. And do young adults want what early friends had?
Thanks for having me. I think some of us do.
Yeah.
Um, I personally would love to find myself in a community filled with the fervor that I have heard early friends had.
Mhm. Sure. What your bio has sort of a charmed Quaker life a little bit here. That you found some spaces. So you start off with the Young Friends program at Baltimore, which everyone always seems to love. It really brings in people and loving and supportive. Then you get to Guilford, the Quaker Leadership Scholar Program, which sort of always exposes, I know Max Carter has talked about exposes all these liberal young friends into, the different strands of Quakerism in history and theology. Quaker Voluntary Service, which is a great way of bringing that post-college life into sort of more of a career, perhaps, and also strong communities that each house has. And now you're working for a School of the Spirit. So these are all like really kind of sort of centralized Quaker communities where people do tend to gravitate to. Um,
Mhm.
how has that sort of pathway been for you?
Yeah, so I think I talked about this in the article a bit, but like pretty I think the biggest shock was kind of going from BYM Young Friends camping program to classes at Guilford. I had a very spiritually diverse Quaker Leadership Scholars Program cohort, people from all across the Quaker spectrum. And I knew that other non UIM type Quakers existed, but I had never met any of them before. So I think that was kind of a steep learning curve. And then those classes, of course, with Max, um, were, yeah, just a bit of a shock to the system. And then it forced me to kind of clarify my own spirituality and religion. And then um, QVS was amazing. I mean, it was a mix of my cohort was a mix of Quakers and non-Quakers, um, as I think they usually are. Um, and so being in a Quaker setting, but one of the only like practicing Quakers or historically practicing Quakers, having to kind of like explain my religion and and my understanding of Quakerism um, to people who weren't necessarily familiar with it already, or yeah, familiar with my understanding of it. And I think Christina Ripley, who founded QVS, and I have, or I, in talks she's given, I resonate with a lot of her like reasoning for starting QVS, and it is, I think, rooted in some of the same frustrations that I have with contemporary liberal Quakerism. I don't I don't want to misquote her, but I think she kind of talked about looking for what she saw in like the Catholic worker movement in Quakerism and not really seeing it and looking to fill that void and like Jesuit volunteer corps. So um, I liked being in a space that was kind of founded on those principles. And then School of the Spirit is I consider it my spiritual home at this point. It's a place where we talk about God and Christ and very candidly and um, yeah, it's a very like spiritual, Christ-centered Quaker space
Mhm.
that also holds my like social and political values. So I'm very grateful for that space.
Yeah, and it seems like, well, there's often been sort of like these spaces here and there that you can find pockets of that. School of the Spirit has been that. Sometimes there's a Quaker Spring that does that. New Foundation Fellowship's been doing it for 50, 60 years, maybe longer. Um,
Yeah.
but it's sometimes hard to find just, in the regular meeting houses. One thing I think about, and that you get on here about outreach, is that there's sort of two different types of people who are attracted to Quakers. And I'm being, very broad brush there, but you have the people who are, spiritual refugees, or, maybe they've been unchurched and they're not really looking for anything that has uh, strong requirements. They like that idea of just being silent and kind of believing whatever they want to believe. And I think a lot of outreach programs go for that. But then you have also the people who are, on fire. Maybe they've read the Journal of George Fox and No Cross, No Crown from Penn. They've, watched a million Quaker Speak videos. They're like, oh, Quakers, I've sort of gotten it. I want to know what this is. And, um, you know, but our outreach programs aren't really geared towards them generally. But it sounds like that's kind of something you're interested in. And tell me, you talk here about some other religious groups that have been doing that better. So tell me how that's been and kind of what you might think for Quakers.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been really interesting the past few years witnessing kind of, and I don't know how like niche this is, if it's just the corners of the internet that I'm on,
Mhm.
um, or if it's more widely understood, but there has been like a big resurgence um, in Catholicism, both Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodox traditions, among my generation, which I find really fascinating. Um, and I try to dive into it a little bit in the article, just like why that might be. I think it has something to do with like people my age. A lot of us were raised in non-religious households, and are just kind of like grasping at like I need some spiritual sustenance. I want this. I also maybe am craving some structure in my life and like direction on how I should be in the world. And religion can offer that. And Catholicism offers a very um, clear, often message on how to be in the world, and it's also aesthetically attractive, I think. And so um, I don't know. I think maybe there's a lot more to it than that, but that's roughly my understanding. And I don't think necessarily that that is any of that is happening on like an intentional outreach thing from the Catholic Church, but
Right.
um, it's happening regardless. So I think, but unfortunately, like often people get sucked into that, and then they are like, okay, I'm going to go with all the more like reactionary or politically conservative
Hmm.
qualities that are associated with Catholicism instead of like following a Catholic worker tradition. Um, so yeah, I guess like I'm interested in kind of capturing some of that need that I see expressed by my demographic, um, and or my age group, and um, maybe redirecting it towards Quakerism, or just towards non-reactionary interpretations of Christian faith.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I identify with this. I mean, I'm sort of a bit of a tridy Quaker, a little bit, if we can call it that. And my wife was also. It's kind of why we got married. And then she became a tridy Catholic. She had grown up Catholic, went
Mm,
back, and now does Eastern Orthodox Church. So that pathway you said there is very clear, and it seems like not just her particularly, but others, like it's a sense of identity that it happens,
mhm,
that it's like a real solid, like, okay, this is what we believe, this is our community. And it's hard to find that in Quaker circles. Um,
right.
so tell me, what would sort of hip, tratty Quaker upswing movement look like? How can you imagine this?
Yeah. I mean, it seems a little impossible that we're going to have the coherence across the Quaker spectrum that Catholics seem to have. And I don't necessarily think we need that. I think we need to kind of figure out just um, what the common denominators are across our our spectrum, and do a lot of like being willing to translate our spiritual languages. I think listening in tongues is like a helpful concept, that, yeah, just being able to understand what somebody means when they say God, if it's not exactly what you mean when you say God, or if people using different words for that. I think that's important. I think grounding, like doing religious education, in in a more effective way, and like grounding scripture in kind of our contemporary world, and saying like, no, there's so much we can learn from this. It's remarkably applicable, a lot of it, to what we're experiencing today, in terms of social justice, in terms of creation care and earth care.
A lot to share with the world,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Quakers are doing.
yeah. And then, yeah, grounding ourselves in the tradition of early friends, and getting back to the roots of, why this faith started in the first place, um, and the conditions of the founding of Quakerism, how they're similar to our current conditions, the conditions of the early Christians too, early
Mhm.
church, like how is what we're experiencing now related to that? Does that makes sense?
One thing that I found interesting was you talking about how things have been changing. Just that your generation is growing up more unchurched, so they don't have anything. So they're looking uh, for something that's easy to access, I guess, but has a strong identity. Um, and also, I've noticed some other things that seem to be shifting. One is, the internet's made it very easy for people to go really deep into Quakerism and find different like ideas and thoughts.
Mhm.
Um, and niches in a way that they couldn't, 20 years ago. Um, and also just I've seen like online worship sort of changing things. People are voting with their feet. I was emailing with a older friend who was saying like her meeting just feels like a social club now. She doesn't have anything, so she started worshiping with a meeting in Indiana, and it's wonderful. I think I wrote down, it's a truly worship community. It is a spiritual home I had stopped looking for. And this is like prominent Philadelphia friend. I mean, if I named her, everyone would be like, oh. And she's like, doing this online worship 1,000 miles away. So we have these sort of things that are changing, inform seekers, online worship that lets us sort of go elsewhere. And
Mhm.
as you say, this unchurched generation that we don't start with the default that they know Christianity as a background. So how is all this informing sort of what you're seeing and what you would hope to see?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's definitely an opportunity um, with the internet, if we can figure out how to wield it, um, to, yeah, just have a bigger presence in the world. I think, like, for various reasons, Quakers can be sequestered and not do a lot of outreach and just wait for people to come to us. Um, and so, if we can figure out how to do that better, I think that would go a long way. Um, and I think building community like what I had in PLSP, where there are like a bunch of Quakers from all across the spectrum, um, having conversations about what Quakerism means to us, in a respectful way. Like we can do that on Zoom in a way that we couldn't before. Um, and so, yeah, bridging the distance gap is huge. I also live in Philly, and like I yeah, I haven't found a meeting community here that really feels like what I'm looking for. So I do sometimes worship elsewhere. Um, and and that has been really profound for me. Um, yeah, I think it opens up all kinds of conversations, and yeah, the internet is such a great tool, and it's so dangerous too. So
Yeah.
I think we just have to use it responsibly.
So what if there's 20 viewers on this video who really like resonate with this vision? What would you recommend as a next step, or to get in contact with you, or sort of where are people maybe to congregate who are interested in pursuing this further?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've had a lot of people reach out to me since this article was published, which has been amazing. I've had so many great conversations with like-minded friends who I didn't even know were out there, and they're already like creating these spaces, um, and having these conversations. So I'm not like in a position to start anything. I'm kind of exploring myself and responding to these people who've reached out to me. Um, I've had some conversations with friends about um, some like groups of young adult friends who are on this kind of Christocentric side of Quakerism, looking to get back to the roots of Quakerism, kind of conservative Quakerism, but um, yeah, but brought into the our current world.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so if people want to reach out to me, like I'm not starting any of these groups, but I might be joining some of them, and I can take you with me. And um, yeah, I think Quaker Spring is a really awesome resource, and so is I mean, School of the Spirit as well. I think
Mhm.
I've had so many amazing conversations with folks who are involved with School of the Spirit. So um, yeah, one thing I've learned from publishing this is that um, yeah, it's out there and it's happening in ways that I didn't even know, and
Okay.
so that's been really exciting. And yeah, I'm also just learning.
Cool. Well, you may not want to lead it, but if you're the contact person, you may be a node at least of
Yeah,
starting.
I'm happy to be a connector. I'm happy to be a
You're
connector.
not being a connector. Okay. Well, you publish in French journal, you end up being the connector. But good. Well, I hope you keep us informed as to what's happening. The magazine or wherever we can share, updates. Because it'd be nice to see what happens and see if people can connect who are maybe not quite at home at their local meetings or are looking for something deeper or looking to connect uh, with like-minded friends. So thank you for writing this and thank you for talking. Are any other things you want to share before we go?
Um, I don't think so. I'm really grateful to the Friends Journal for publishing this, and to everyone who's reached out to me so far. And yeah, I love having these conversations. I definitely would love anyone to to reach out if you see this and are curious and want to connect, just to talk or to be plugged into something bigger. Yeah, I'd love that.
Great. Well, great. And I see you didn't have your email on the bio, but people can also just email Friends Journal and we'll forward them to Olivia. So thanks, Olivia, for talking with us today, and hope to hear again from you soon.
Thanks so much.